Well, before we do that, though, we have to talk about the municipal bond market. Sales surging this year, up more than 41% so far, and a big chunk of that, about 15% of that, coming from the state of Texas. And in fact, we are learning now that the University of Texas is launching a new center dedicated to the muni market. This ahead of an anticipated boom in infrastructure investments, and it is the subject of today's Muni Moment. Joining us to talk about this is Martin Luby, he's Associate Professor of Public Affairs at UT Austin and the center's founding director. I'm really intrigued by this, Martin. I mean, I kind of came of age when, working in municipal finance was, kind of the thing they put all, the whack kids in the corner here. But it's really kind of become front and center for a lot of reasons. Obviously, the demand for infrastructure improvements across various states, as well as the responses to climate change that a lot of these cities and states need to take.
Yeah, I mean, there's really an acute need for better understanding and greater skills acquisition in the municipal capital markets for the reasons you state. This is a $4 trillion market. It's a large market. It impacts all of us. So all the physical infrastructure that we use, roads, buildings, bridges, telecommunications, water, wastewater, airports, hospitals, we are all affected by it. So greater knowledge of the market and greater skills of participants in the market is really, really necessary, as we're going to have to ratchet up our infrastructure and investment over the next decade or so.
Because this is infrastructure in the great state of Texas, there's a huge energy component here. UT Austin has a big push to address extreme weather and specifically the resilience of the existing energy grid. Talk a little bit about how those two will intersect.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely needs across the board for financing the energy sector, and those needs are going to come from both the private sector and the public sector. So state and local governments are going to be necessary to actually raise capital to make those investments. The state of Texas deals with wildfire, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, severe, obviously, heat. So these sorts of extreme weather put a lot of stress on our physical infrastructure. So the expectation is that the needs for finance are only going to accelerate over the next couple decades.
I am curious as to what you think the response is going to be by students and other folks funneling in to this center. Do you think there is going to be a lot of demand, a lot of appetite to participate in this?
Well, we hope so. And, we notice that students kind of across the board, across many departments, are interested in this. So our business school students are interested in it because it has financial markets implications. Our policy students are interested in it because it has kind of social implications. And then obviously engineering and some of the other professional schools understand how critical finance is to their projects. So I think that the center really can serve as a really nice hub across the university to bring the various kind of departments together and students together, and faculty for that matter as well. Is
this only for graduate students right now? I'm curious about what opportunities you anticipate offering undergrads down the road.
So the LBJ school is going to be, we're launching an undergraduate program for the first time next year. So the hope is that undergraduate students will be able to participate in this as well as our graduate students. So, and again, we're looking at students not just at LBJ, but people across campus, so students across campus that have an interest in municipal finance and are an interest just in our physical infrastructure, that they'll be a participant in the center.
I am curious. I mean, just picking your brain here, Professor, just kind of about the direction of municipal finance overall, and more importantly, the types of projects coming down the pike here. Do you think it's going to look meaningfully different than maybe what we saw over the last, 20 or 30 years or so? Is this a big change in the market, or is this just simply, a broadening out of the types of projects that are going to be included?
Well, I think that the basic projects that are needed to be financed are going to maintain, right? I mean, our roads and our bridges and our buildings and our our typical physical infrastructure, that's still going to be needed to be built out and maintained. But the climate issue that you mentioned, and enhancing our resiliency and even adaptation, and even potentially energy transition, so transitioning to other sorts of forms of energy, that's going to necessitate significant investments in infrastructure as well. So, I think the bread and butter is going to maintain, but I think it will branch out, especially on the energy side, and especially as a result of issues related to extreme weather.
And Martin, just one final question here. I am curious about the state of Texas's relationship with some of the big municipal underwriters. We saw several of them actually were effectively banned primarily because of the perception about some of their ESG policies here. How is UT Austin in this particular program going to navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that we're going to have to deal with, and that we're going to have to address, right? Because it's a major kind of issue in the muni market today, is some of the ESG issues and how that affects the financial intermediaries that participate in the market, and how that ultimately will affect state and local governments in the form of potentially higher borrowing costs. So, Texas, in a lot of ways, is kind of ground zero in that on that issue, but certainly other states are dealing with it as well. So, I would anticipate that we would probably try to weigh in and participate in discussions and potentially research in that area.
All right, fantastic. Martin Luby, really appreciate your giving us some insight into this new program. UT Austin Associate Professor of Public Affairs and the founding director of UT's Center on Municipal Capital Markets.